Well, here we are, the last episode of Batman Beyond, and I gotta wonder, was this the best choice of episode to end the series on? I don't know. We'll find out together. Stay tuned. Hello friends, welcome back to the show. So glad to see you all once again. And if you're new here, thank you for stopping by. This is the last episode of Batman Beyond Reviews. If you're new here, thank you for stopping by as well. This is a show where we go back and look at cartoons and movies that we grew up on in the 80s and 90s. And today we're talking about the last episode of Batman Beyond. If you haven't seen my other reviews for those, you can check out some of the playlists up here and see what you've been missing. But today we're talking about Unmasked, which originally aired on December 18th, 2001.
Hi, Max. Sorry I'm late.
I really do like this story, and it's kind of a unique interpretation of secret identities and kind of a new point of view on that subject with superheroes, and it makes for an interesting story. But I feel like this episode carries a little bit more weight because it's the last episode of Batman Beyond. And so I want to kind of unpack that with you and see if this was the best choice, if it was a choice, to go out on for the series. And we'll talk all about that right after our 60-second Beyond Bomb rundown, the last one of the season. I'll stop. Everything's going to be the last one of the series. Our Beyond Bomb rundown of the episode, and we have a special guest to do that for us, so take it away.
So the episode starts off with Max and Terry at their high school, and Max tells Terry that she made a joke about Batman Terry, and Terry says she shouldn't make jokes about that, and Max says, oh, why not? And then Terry says, oh, remember that kid? And then it flashes back not too long ago where there's a kid named Miguel at a park, and he goes up a building, and a few blocks away, Batman is stopping Kobra from robbing a bank, and they take the fight all the way to the park, and they end up blowing up the building where Miguel is on. So that means Batman has to ditch Kobra to save Miguel. And in doing so, he has to remove his mask to save him. And right when he thinks everything's good, Miguel goes on television saying he knows what Batman looks like. And Kobra's watching as well. And they have this device where they can read people's minds. So they plan to kidnap Miguel to read his mind, to see who Batman is. So they try doing that later, and Batman ends up stopping them. And he ends up handing Miguel to the police. But then he realizes that he's been bamboozled, and he realizes that the police are actually Kobra in disguise. So now Kobra has Miguel hostage, and they're gonna read his mind. So Batman ends up finding where they are, where the headquarters, and they end up stopping all of them. But he's too late because Kobra's already read the kid's mind, and they know what he looks like. But the episode ends off where he checks the monitor and realizes that they got the wrong guy. I want to thank you, Andy, for the opportunity to review this episode because this is a really fun episode, and I hope you do this again with another series because this is really fun and I'd love to do this again.
Don't worry, McGinnis. Batman filled in for you.
So this episode, after doing a little bit of research into the kind of behind the scenes story of this episode, I guess, was fraught with production problems. And if you notice, there's a huge gap between the second to last episode, which aired in April, and now the last episode, which is now 8 months later in December. And I guess there was a lot of reasons for that. And one of which was this was truly never was intended to be the series finale of the show. And so I think that they wanted to do something different. And obviously later on in Justice League Unlimited, there's an episode called The Epilogue, which a lot of people consider the true finale of Batman Beyond and reveal some things that they didn't reveal in the series.
You can't even joke about this, understand?
And so this episode, I think, just kind of got pushed around, and it originally was going to air on Kids WB, but there was reasons why they weren't ready to do that. So it ended up airing on Cartoon Network, and originally it was slated to air on September 14th, 2001, which, as you know, was just a few days after the 9/11 attacks. And so I think with the elements of the terrorism in this, that it ended up getting pushed again. So it's kind of interesting reading about what was going on behind the scenes with this, because there was a lot of issues.
Come on, it was all over the net.
And it's kind of unfortunate because this ended up being the series finale. But all of that aside, we're going to look at it in terms of if this was a good episode or a strong way for the series to go out on.
Come on, you've been doing that all day.
This episode structurally is very different than what we've been seeing, is that it's a flashback episode to a story that I guess would have taken place during season 1. And I'm okay with that. Again, I don't know if that's the best way for the series to go out on, but also the story that they're talking about in this, I don't know if it needed to be a flashback. Other than the elements of like Terry going, hey, I made these mistakes in the past, I won't do this again.
It happened right after I started being Batman.
In that regard, this makes sense as series finale, because if it wasn't a flashback, it would have been like, wow, Terry's learned nothing in 3 seasons of being Batman. But in this case, it's kind of neat in the sense that it's nostalgic, going back and looking at how far he's come as Batman and seeing that story play out.
Such aggressive behavior.
But like I said, just structurally, the whole thing is a flashback episode, which is not uncommon in television. They do that all the time. But we're kind of hearing this story along with Max.
Great story. All it did was prove my point.
But at the same time, that gives some inconsistencies. Kobra was this organization that we met up with a while ago, but so this seems to have happened before Kobra, but it would have meant that Terry already knew who Kobra was. So that creates some problems.
How do you suppose that happened?
I wouldn't know.
So structurally speaking, it's a little odd for how they brought this plot to be. But the story itself is actually kind of interesting, with talking about how secret identities and why you don't want to share your secret identity with everybody, and Bruce teaching that lesson to Terry.
That doesn't matter. What matters is that other people think he knows what you look like.
And Max not understanding that and going, hey, let's go tell Dana. Which part of me is going, yeah, why don't you tell Dana? It probably would help your relationship out. But also, all this makes sense in terms of why he wasn't able to do that, and why he learned his lesson, and why he's been very secretive about keeping his identity from Dana.
Especially a certain girlfriend. Life might be a lot easier for you.
And I actually think this might be one of the better depictions of Kobra, which I'm kind of surprised that I'm saying that, because certainly they feel like kind of a subplot to what's going on as the primary plot of this kid learning Batman's true identity.
Kobra is your only family.
We see kind of an inner a little bit more of the inner workings of them. They have this really cool device to be able to see people's memories up on a screen, which I feel like could have been used in other of the stories.
It turns your thoughts into pictures.
But also the way that they capture the kid with posing as the cops and even fooling Batman. All that to me is pretty interesting.
I think I just handed Miguel over to Kobra.
I would say the thing that they're missing in this episode is we don't really learn of this global terrorist act that they're trying to accomplish. It's just sort of they're just trying to stop Batman because he's always ruining their plans.
Is there anyone you told about our operation?
And this episode shows something that I think is very impactful that we haven't seen, I don't think, in the DC universe much at all, is this idea of a suicide. It's implied, I guess, but it seems very clear that this member of Kobra, to keep his secret alive and to not be captured, kills himself. And again, it could have been maybe dealt with a little bit more directly, but maybe that wasn't okay. Maybe that wasn't something that the network wanted to do. But this was on Cartoon Network. They could have got away with anything.
I'll be remembered.
But I thought it was kind of interesting, and again, it shows this darker side of Kobra that we didn't really see in some of the other episodes with them, of featuring this organization that has their members so in fear and so committed that they're willing to kill themselves for the cause, and that's interesting to me, and that makes for a better version of this criminal organization.
I might have lost this one battle, but you've lost the war.
And then the reveal at the end to have this kid imagine Terry to be this action hero, this action figure that he had was really kind of cool, and it's kind of sweet that it's like the innocence of the child and mixed in with this him idolizing this other hero, this other action figure, coping mechanism of imprinting that memory in his mind that that's who he saw when he saw Batman. All that is really interesting, and I certainly can relate to it as a kid with a big imagination and playing with toys like this and watching cartoons and imagining if they were real and all that kind of stuff that just made for a really kind of cool element to the plot.
Because that was him.
In that moment, the way that this episode ends is sort of a one notch on the side of like, this was a good episode to end on. It shows the legacy of Batman carrying on, and it shows the impact that he has on kids and saving people and being a hero in all different forms to all different types of people, that I think it would have been disappointing if the last episode was just him beating up some bad guy. But this story was really about him making a connection with a kid, and this kid still being involved in Terry's life or seeing him every day and having no idea, or maybe not, based on that last look he gives, of how much of an impact that Terry had on his life, and he has no idea. And that's what Batman stands for. That's the mantle that Terry carries as Batman is, hey, you know what? I have to do this job. I choose to do this job, and as part of not revealing my secret identity is I don't get any accolades. I don't get any glory from that, but I'm just doing what's right.
I guess in his mind, he was just substituting one hero for another.
That's kind of a neat theme to Batman Beyond in general, Batman in general, but also for this show to go out on. So although I don't think that this was planned and was well thought out to be, oh, here's how we want to end the show, I think as far as when you look at any of the episodes that they could have ended on, particularly of maybe season 3 or the last half of season 3, I think this was a good choice for however much of a choice they had to make in this. I think that this landed well to be the last episode of Batman Beyond.
And he's never recognized you.
Never.
So when it comes time to rank this episode, as far as what this episode was, I thought it was pretty good. Could it have been better? Yes. Are there areas that kind of fell flat or weren't established as well as they could have? Sure. But I think when you look at the list of episodes, I don't think it's as down on the bottom of the list. I don't think it's at the top of the list, but I think that it falls somewhere in the middle. So for all those reasons, it falls at the number 17 spot of my favorite episodes so far. Kind of far up on the list in the grand scheme of things. I do have it falling just below Once Burned because, again, that story was just really interesting in terms of having the subplot with Terry and Ten and all those kind of elements incorporated into there, and the duality and Terry living with both sides of his psyche that he's got to deal with was just kind of interesting enough that it beat this one out. But I do have this one beating out big time, because to me that episode, I think if I had to encapsulate it, was just a big guy versus Batman. Yeah, they had some history to their story, but again, like that episode would not have served well as last episode like this one did.
Hey, I'm one of the good guys.
So my question for all of you, what do you think? Do you think this was a good choice to go out on? Again, I don't think they had much of a choice. I don't think they had a lot of episodes that they could have picked from. But are you satisfied with how the series ended, I guess is the bottom line. Obviously, I know a lot of us would have liked to see the show go on, another season 4 or 5, maybe a reboot or things like that. But given what we have, do you think this was the best way for them to go out on? Or do you think there was another episode that you would have rather seen be the last episode? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this episode and enjoyed my reviews of Batman Beyond, whether you agreed with me all the time or not, consider sharing it with a friend. If you have a friend that also enjoys Batman Beyond, let them know what I'm doing here on the channel. It always helps me out tremendously. So, as we are finished up with season 3 and the series of Batman Beyond, I have an episode coming out very shortly with kind of my final thoughts on Batman Beyond and what I thought about the series. If you watch my first episode reviewing Batman Beyond, you'll know that I didn't watch a lot of this when I was a kid. I was getting ready to graduate high school and was involved in other activities and wasn't watching Batman Beyond on a regular basis, and have watched episodes here and there over the years. But really, this was my first opportunity to watch it from the beginning to the end and watch it with all of you and share my thoughts as we go. So now that I've had a chance to see the whole series and see the whole story and kind of take a step back and see it as a whole, I'm going to share my thoughts about the series in an episode coming out very soon. So keep an eye for that. And also, we'll be announcing what I'm going to be doing next here on the channel. So I'm sure many of you are probably eager to hear what show I'm going to be reviewing next or what we're going to be doing next here on the channel. So stay tuned for that information. Sorry, got to keep you hanging for a little bit longer. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Andy Knode, and I'll see you soon.